I think we're good
Very
to
true.
start here. We've got some folks with us. Welcome, everybody. We're so glad you're able to join us today. This is a partnership and a friendship that just joined over the last couple of months, where we met Bill through some new hires that we made with Bruce Bracken and him meeting up. So it's really our pleasure to have Bill here. He's a 25-year veteran in the contact center space as a consultant, and also more specifically within the utility space. I think the concepts here today, Bill, are going to be pretty universal, but the language may be sort of a little bit more speaking your lingo if you're from that industry. So Bill Leasure, Micah Peterson here. So I just wanted to kind of intro you a little bit. So have you share, if you want to just kind of bring us up through, maybe you're like a computer science guy, obviously entrepreneurial, you started your own companies and things like that. So just take us a little bit through how you got to what you're doing, and then maybe talk a little bit about what you're passionate about and sort of what brought you to this webinar today.
Yeah, I could certainly do that. I've been working as an independent consultant for a number of years, primarily with utilities, and really mostly with the Exelon family of utilities. Okay. So Com Edison, Philadelphia Electric is the one that we're going to be talking about today.
So all down the
Baltimore
East Coast.
Gas and Electric.
Is that?
Well, then Com Edison is out over in Chicago.
Okay.
But mostly Northeast. Yeah, Atlantic City Electric. But then also did some work with PG&E out in California, and early in my career worked for Florida Power. So a couple different utilities that I've worked with.
All over the place.
But as you mentioned, Bruce Bracken is a friend of mine that I had worked with a couple of years ago, and we were just catching up partly around the COVID-19 and what's going on in the world. And he told me about procedure flow, and I noticed pretty quickly that the work that we had done for PICO, that we'll talk about a little bit when we get to the case study, if we had procedure flow last year when we provided a lot of brand new training for a whole bunch of agents, I think things could have looked a lot different. And so the case study that I'd like to walk us through today talks a little bit about what we did, which was really good work, and we added a lot of value. But I think looking back on it, I think we could have done even a lot more had we had procedure flow.
Yeah, and just so everybody knows, my passion is knowledge management and human knowledge sharing. So I just love it, the idea of how do you share knowledge with people without talking to each other, essentially. So can we put what we know in something that other people can consume asynchronously so that we don't waste a lot of time? And so that's been my life's passion for a long time. And then when we were talking about doing this webinar, just so you guys understand, I was thinking about Bill sort of as an expert in this space and training, and he would have these tips about how do you, because I don't really know everything about training, how do you make it engaging during this time of remote, and you might be running a training class with 10, 15, 20 people that are all at home, and how do you make that something that is exciting? And so I immediately thought of Bill. So he's going to present his ideas on his expertise there. And then it also bridges into procedure flow. I think it dovetails nicely in the sense that we're passionate about making training more engaging as well. And so there'll be this tie-in, I think, of as we share together. But we didn't pay Bill to be here, and there's no this isn't a self-procedure Bill thing. So I just wanted to say that up front. So that's perfect. And then our title today is How Utilities Are Handling Remote Training During COVID-19. And maybe, or should be, we might encourage some behaviors that maybe aren't happening today. So, and then do you want to comment on that a little bit in terms of like how you're thinking about this title and what we're doing today?
Yeah, so a couple thoughts. One is that, as you mentioned, this idea of remote training is new, right? So we don't want to claim to be experts on this or like we've been doing it for a long time. In fact, a lot of the learning we're actually translating even into today, what we're doing for this webinar, right? So the same things that we'll be talking about for remote training for a call center is exactly the same types of techniques and some of the things that hopefully we'll show you a little bit through the rest of this call thing.
And so I have my first, on our last webinar with Jeff Toyster, we talked about, are there meta things that we can do while we're doing these webinars so that you can take some of these things and do it with what you're doing. So he suggested not using PowerPoint. So we're gonna, as much as possible, we're gonna try to be
That's right.
fun here. So I got my piece of paper and then I flip it around. So the goal for today is we're gonna discuss training principles, right? Just generally, like how do you just make good engaging training, because those principles then become amplified through remote. And then what are some extra things that will make remote even better, and just share those best practices. So that's really our goal here today. So I think with that said, Bill, we'll do our first open chat here for everybody, which is another meta thing that people can do. So if everyone wants to, we've opened it up for everyone to be able to see everybody's chats. And if you want to go in there, our first question is, what topics would you be really interested in us talking about today? And just seeing a flavor of what you respond to there will help us to shape perhaps our time and conversation. But just really interested in like what everybody's struggling with, answers they want, things that they want to have addressed, situations that they're in. Maybe you're doing half and half, full remote, whatever it is. So to get things going here, we also want to encourage you to put stuff in the chat. So Amanda on our team, from our marketing team, is going to be watching. And if somebody puts a legit, not just like a hi, I'm from Canada, but like if you put something in there as per the questions and the polls and things, we're actually going to add your name to a draw and do $100 on an Amazon gift card, which I think will get you something that you've been shopping for. Oh, so we got one quick. Once the new about the AWS card, they're coming in now.
Yeah,
so that's
always
perfect.
Makes a difference.
And Bill, you did suggest that from some webinars you did. So go ahead, write those down. I might just read actually a couple of them. So what is a perfect length for virtual training? So that's a great question. Bill, you might talk to that a little bit. How long should a training session be? How do you chunk down long courses and day-long inter-remote sessions? That's a great question. We're gonna address that directly today. Jack from Massachusetts looking for techniques to convert technical ILT to VILT. So, yeah, thank you guys for sharing that. So your names are already entered into the draw, and we'll look for more commentary there. So we're going to launch in here. I know time's ticking and we want to get going. So you've got a case study, Bill, that you want to share with us about PICO, which stands for Philadelphia Electric Company. That's right. And some work that you did with them a year ago. So why don't you just talk about that a little bit, set it up, and tell us a little bit about the challenge, what their before situation was as you moved towards an after your work was done, and just share that a little bit.
No, that sounds good. I'll definitely do that. One quick housekeeping thing, question for you. The chats that are coming in, because I see that there are a bunch. We'll address these and then send an email out afterwards to the audience to answer these. Is that how we'll do that?
Yeah, we'll work in conjunction with you, answer all these questions, send that out that response, probably as a blog post, something to that effect. But we'll make sure that you get a chance to respond to each one of them. So you're not asking a question in vain. We're going to directly address each one.
Perfect. Okay, so to jump into kind of the meat of the case study a little bit, I know that what we had talked about is with this webinar, a lot of what we're talking about is how to handle remote training and what are some of the best practices. And I know that what we're trying to share is a little bit of just even the small nuggets, like the fact that we're doing the split screen with 2 presenters instead of just one. It seems like a small thing, but it's actually really effective to have 2 different voices and a little bit of a conversational flow.
So like every time I interrupt you, if somebody was writing an email or something, they might stop and I'm just kidding. Go ahead.
No, but it actually it breaks things up a lot more than just than one voice the whole time, right? Yeah, and then also what you were doing with flipping around the pieces of paper with your wife's hobby paper there that you stole from her, that kind of thing definitely makes a difference instead of PowerPoint slides. So you've got something that's a little bit more of visual interest. But really, the main thing that we wanted to convey through the rest of this this case study and this conversation is 3 really big points that you can see.
So that's probably backwards in your camera, so I'll try to help you read it there.
All right, go ahead.
The first one says relevant, and then the second one says engaging, and the third one it says you point to the resources. You're not about memorization. So
Exactly.
yeah, so so those are your big top three, and you're gonna fill the meat in on the bones there. So why, in that sense,
Exactly.
then start it out for us, set it up to share the challenges, and then we'll see if we can draw those conclusions out.
Sounds good. So the point is that those big three are challenges in any sort of training environment. The single most important thing is to make the training relevant to, in this case, the call center agent's job. If you don't do that, then you're totally missing the point. The whole thing is to make them better at their job. That's why you're doing the training in the first place. The second is to keep it engaging. And this is really important in a classroom setting, obviously, but in a classroom, you can read body language. You've got an instructor. You get to remote training like this, and I'm talking to Micah, and I have no idea if we're keeping the audience engaged, except for
I could be reading an email. I could be reading an email right now, and you might not even know it. Maybe right. The white glow would be slightly different, but you may or may not know. Yeah.
So obviously try and keep it engaging. But then the third one is one that I really picked up over the last 2 years, where I was running more training projects than I expected. And I was working with some folks that really do training a lot for a living. That's their main focus in their job. At ClearPath, we do a lot of different types of consulting, including training. But this was one that I picked up, is that it's not so much about getting information into the agent's heads, right? You're not trying to get them to memorize new information. The most effective training is where you're training to materials that they're going to continue to have in front of them day to day as they go about their job. And you want to train to the resources, whether it's job aids or something that's in the software that they're using, or whatever they're doing to manage their job. You want to train to the resources so that they know where to get the information they need at the point of need.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. They say, water travels the path of least resistance. And as I've been setting up this irrigation line, I'm learning all about that. And so if you don't make the water flow to where they should be getting it, then that water is going to dump out as shoulder tapping, hand raising, customers on hold, going inside, asking people for help. Right. So early and often pointing them into where they can get their own help. That's basically what you're saying, right?
Yeah, exactly. Because the fact of the matter is, in most call center environments, the work and the rules is so complex that it is impossible to get the agents to learn and memorize everything that they need to know for every situation.
There's too much.
So you really want to be able to get them to know where to look and know where to look to get information on a really short notice, right? Because it's still a real-time interaction.
So how did you do that for Pico then? What was their challenge that they were doing?
So last year with Pico, what we were doing is that Pico had run into some challenges with one of their outsourced vendors, right? So they were working with a partner that provided about 250 call center agents. And the relationship kind of took a turn south for one reason or another. And they decided that they needed to move to a different outsourced vendor, right? And so they called us to come in and help with that. And that meant that we needed to help stand up all of the technology environment and the desktop and get all the tools in place, get all the software provisioned. But the biggest piece was that we had to hire 200 to 250 new call center agents and get them trained. And these are folks that were just right off the street. Very few had any sort of background in call center or background in utilities, let alone this was for the billing and payments area, which is one of the more complex areas at any utility, right?
And so going into this, you would have had maybe like binders or a knowledge base, or what materials did you have at hand in order to sort of like start into creating that training for them?
Yeah, so it was a very traditional environment. It was what you see in a lot of places. There were 24 different training modules, and each training module was, 50 to 100 pages of text. And I'll show you an example of that in just a few minutes here. But lots and lots of rules, When there were job aids, they were flow diagrams that people would print out and
Yep.
thumbtack onto the cue wall or have at their desk. And so then, the challenge was, how do you keep that information fresh?
Sure. Yeah.
Right.
So you
And
got
also,
24 modules, 50 pages a
yeah,
piece. So we're talking about something yay thick, right? And
yeah,
so
at least there's maybe
right.
several
So
big like that. Yeah.
if anybody has, if that's your situation today, maybe if you add like a hashtag me too in the chat, and that'll give us sort of we could see if people's heads are nodding up and
Yeah.
down or not. But certainly, a lot of the accounts that I've worked on, there's been, whether it's digital, as a Word document, or whether it is actually physically printed out, it's fairly common to have these folders or buckets of documents, and then the documents themselves can be anywhere from 3 to 50 pages. So that's a fairly
Yep.
common setup, right?
Right. Right.
Yeah.
So what I think we did a really good job of is, number one on my list, right? We made it relevant. So
Okay.
we took and we kind of reorganized that information to make sure that the agents could align all of those rules to kind of job scenarios, and we shifted into a little bit more of scenario-based training that I know that you're going to talk about in a little bit.
Yep.
And then for each of those 24 modules, we created a little bit of a workflow process that was just a PowerPoint diagram.
Okay.
And it was just to
So
give
you would
them
flow chart or build
context.
some sort of a flow
Yep.
within a picture, dump that into a PowerPoint, have multiple pages, and then that would give you something to speak to while you're doing the training.
Right, right. Because before we got into the 50 pages of all of the details on what screen to navigate to, and when to show a full account balance, and when a partial payment arrangement was appropriate, all those details, we wanted to give kind of big picture view. Here's what you're trying to do to solve the customer's problem.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. So if that was the setup then, and you have this bunch of documents, and then you're trying to turn that into something more compelling, then that first point that you had about being relevant, like what was your revelation about how to take that material and turn it into, I think you're alluding to it a little bit, but it's like, how do you break that up, or what do you do to it to give it relevance so that the agent actually cares about what they're learning about?
Yeah. So, what we did was at the high level, kind of like I said, we created the workflow diagrams and then gave it context so that we tied it back into their jobs. And then we backed that up with role playing and scenario-based training that then flowed through exactly what that process was, right? What I think
kind of
what we'll get to in a minute.
touching through like from one relevant. So you're giving them context, here's why or when this would happen or what this is about in this industry, into
Right.
role playing, which is about engagement, right? Like it's about, instead of me sleeping or playing a video game on my iPhone while this remote training is going on, all of a sudden you say, hey, Micah, Sally's calling in. This is your situation, right? So that's kind of what you're getting to.
Right, right. Well, and also the ability to break down a high level flow or process or thought process into all of the more complex, detailed processes that back that up, if that makes sense.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
So, and I'll show a little bit more about that in just a couple minutes.
Yeah. And I, from my university days, I always loved the construct of what, why, how. So like whenever you're going to teach somebody something, you might, and it sounds like this is kind of basically what you're doing, is taking a whole mishmash of things and like pulling it together into these contextual modules and saying, what are we going to learn about? Why is this important? Why does anybody care about this? Why are we even talking about this? And then how are you going to do it? Which is your details of stuff, right?
Yeah,
yeah.
Exactly.
And
well, then for points 2 and 3, I was probably going to go the same place you are, right? So then for points 2 and 3, the way that we made it engaging is through two things. One, the scenarios where we had a sandbox, right? Kind of a simulator environment that was very much like the live production environment. And then we would role play calls, right? And the sandbox environment was set up to have dummy accounts in it with accounts that are in a certain status or had certain balances. And it was a sandbox that would reset every night so that as we played through one particular scenario, we could make changes in it. It didn't harm the production environment, but the trainers knew what to expect, what the numbers should be, what they were looking for, and it was something that was very repeatable. And
I like
that
that.
tied in,
And
yeah,
learning by doing, as a core ethos of everybody would understand apprenticeship. And it's like, if you're going to be a carpenter, you can't fully appreciate being a carpenter until you get your hand on a saw and a hammer and, all that stuff and start doing it yourself. And so the simulator really gets
yeah.
you to that, right?
Yeah. And then the other thing that did is, by the time folks got on the phones and started taking live calls, it was very similar to what they had seen in the classroom environment.
Yeah.
Right. So it was a much easier transition.
Yeah, that's perfect. So then in the end, how did that project go? What happened with the Pico account?
It was a good project. In a little over 6 months, we stood up, like I said, about including back office, it was 250 total agents across 2 different locations, one in Atlanta and then one in Alabama. And by all accounts, it was a success.
Yep.
We transitioned 100% of the call volume. The average handle time was a little bit higher than the experienced agents that they had moved away from. So, but then
sure.
Over the next couple of months, that settled back down as agents became more comfortable and had fewer questions. So I think what's interesting is overall, we did a really good job with the project, and it was very well received. But then, like a month or so ago, when I first, met Bruce and kind of reconnected and started talking about procedure flow, that's where I looked at that and said, yeah, we did a good job, but we could have done even better, right?
Sure.
And that's kind of what sparked this conversation. Yeah.
Awesome. So I'll just kind of bring this back up again. There's Bill's big 3. And I know a lot of you are asking kind of fairly specific questions about, like, what should the duration of the training be, maximum in one session, or how many hours can you do per day? And, you used to be able to have them in a classroom for, 4, 5, 6 hours with breaks. So there's really practical questions, but we will get to some of that, but I do want you to understand that the principles that Bill's talking about here, these get you to those things, right? Like, the more relevant it is, the more engaging it is. And the more you're able to do hands-on learning by doing, by not cramming and memorization, but by actually allowing people to touch it and do it. This is not only, we know from experience, this is going to shorten your training time dramatically, but it's also going to be more fun. It's going to be more engaging. Role playing is more fun than listening to somebody talk, right? So those are
the
really
more
key,
interactive
big 3.
Yeah, exactly. The more interactive it is, obviously, the longer you can go without really losing your audience. I will say I've done a few QBRs recently, all remote. And so my experience is that we've been able to go comfortably 2 hours with breaks kind of every 45 minutes or,
jumping jacks depending on the half pace. An hour mark.
Exactly. Yeah, true. Just getting up and moving around makes a big difference, right?
Yeah. And I would say university lecture style, they never go beyond 45 minutes. They know people can't handle anything beyond that. And even when you look at webinar structures and things like that, it's pretty hard to keep people past an hour without some blocks of eating or doing something interesting. I want to break this.
I would say my experience so far. Yeah, I was just going to say my experience so far is that 2 hours is about the limit of how long we've been able to keep people, even with making it engaging, before you take a good half-hour break and go do something else and then come back.
Yeah. And Jeff Toyster, just to kind of repeat, when we were with him a couple of weeks ago, he did say that, and we're trying to do it here on the webinar as much as possible. You've got stuff to say and show, but if you can stop and interrupt and do something engaging, and pull people back in, he said you should be doing that every 5 minutes, which sounds crazy, but in these remote times, it just really is. Maybe in a classroom, not so much, but it certainly remotely, that's what you got to do. So on that note, we have another open question. And so we want to hear from you guys and let you guys share with each other. And so as we you guys are asking questions there, which is amazing. Thank you so much. That maybe you can help each other. So put something in the chat now that what have you done to either improve or reduce training time? So improve the training in some dramatic way or reduce your training time. What is something that you've done that's been effective? Could be just in general, because we're all getting new to remote training. Training classrooms are maybe a new idea for a lot of people. But if you've done something even in this remote season, add that as well. And everybody's going to benefit from that, and it'll end up in our notes in the end. So feel free to share there as well. So as people are punching in some of those items, we might come back and read a little bit of that. Bill, if it's okay, I know you have another section where you want to show what you might have done if you had had the opportunity to use something procedure flow for your point 3, which is less memorization and more hands-on. So as you, just to kind of prep for that, I just wanted to, come out and say my piece and my tips in this. And so there's one, Marcia South, she says, use video. So that's good. I'm there's a few ways to assume that, but there's I'm just going to flip this sign up for 1 sec here, Bill, if you want to just give me back the screen space.
Oh, okay. Yep. There you go.
Just before Bill goes into that, I'll share a couple of items here from my top list, and so for me, so I was just, and that Marcia South, I think she was saying use video. I think having your camera on is critical. Like if you don't have your camera on, like it's just, there's so much you don't know. And so if you can force people to certainly use a webcam in a professional way, that's going to be amazing. And maybe you meant something else by that as well, Marcia, if you want to clarify. So here's mine. Maybe Bill, you'll have to read them because it's backwards for me too. But this is my procedure flow world. It's what I'm passionate about. So go ahead and hit off that list there.
All right. So create scenario flows, right? Just definitely, right in line with what we were just talking about. Throw away the slides, which we're going to immediately violate, and I'm going to show you a couple of slides here in a minute. So there are times for a couple of visuals with slides, but definitely try to minimize. Create and update backstory in the flows. Yeah, that's really important. That goes to what we were talking about creating relevance. So it's one thing to have the flows, but putting them in context and talking a little bit about, what's the reason for that flow existing and what's the big picture, what you're trying to accomplish.
Yeah, and I'll mention as well, there's just something as simple as an acronym that's specific to your industry that nobody else knows except for you guys, right? And it's like, oh yeah, shouldn't they know what what was one that you said for the utilities industry the other day for what's an industry jargon right off the top of your head?
Oh shoot, I forget what the one was.
It was
I know that one of them that we were talking about.
For people maybe that needed assistance, like maybe there's a little 3-letter acronym for that.
So we were talking about CAP, which was PICO's customer assistance program, right?
Okay,
so that would be appropriate for what we did last year. Yeah.
So if you say CAP to me, it means my hat. If you say CAP for them, it means customer assistance program. And so just something as simple as a backstory box that's highlighted on the side that says CAP means this, and you're just opening up that person's world, but you're not doing it in a lecture style where you're pumping it full of information that they're just going to forget in 7 days. And
at PICO there were, I was going to say at PICO there were tons of them, right? There was cutoff for non-payment, was CONP, or do you give them a deferred payment agreement as a DPA? And so from not necessarily from the customer's perspective calling in, but for the agents, the jargon and the 3-letter acronyms and stuff is pretty pervasive still.
Yep. So then number 4.
Create caller situations and is it say persons? It's a little blurry on the end there. Caller situations.
Personas. My wife did this for me because my handwriting is illegible, so she must have missed the O. But personas.
Yeah, exactly. And then following right with that, role playing the scenarios is the last one there. So like we were talking about is, it's one thing to set them up, but then actually making sure that the agents actively participate in the scenarios and in the role play. Because I've seen classrooms where 2 trainers will get up and then they'll show it back and forth, and that's okay. But so much more meaningful to have the agent actively thinking through their side of the conversation, right?
Yeah, and there's other items in there as well. There's recorded calls, of course, so you can take some of your most entertaining, perhaps, like maybe a customer gets upset about something or whatever, and it's like these very dramatic situations. So if you've got those ones and you can highlight them and then show how you would go through these scenarios with recorded calls. So there's lots of different ideas there. There was a few more things that people threw in here that I thought were great. Erica Guge said that use breakout rooms within Zoom. We started using those for our team lunches that we do once a week as a procedure flow team. So, 20 plus people, you want to be able to break up. There's only 2 people talking in a big group. So if you can cut it up into 5 or 6 rooms, and then people can have more meaningful conversation. So you could give people a task, go do something, come back, have them share from that group. It's just like having breakout tables, right? So it's a great, another great one. So I'm
Mike,
done.
a question for you.
Yeah, go ahead.
Hey, Mike, question for you on that one. And this is going off script a little bit, but I haven't seen this, but have you seen where Zoom has the ability to do breakout rooms? I think I heard that that's a possibility.
It took me a second because I had to update my client. My client was older and I couldn't find it. I was like, where is it? So I finally just upgraded my client, and then I saw the button finally. So if you are the host of the meeting, you will see the breakout button right on the bar on the bottom. You click on it and it'll give you can either manually split people up, or you can just click a randomize button, and in one click, you say, I want 4 rooms. It'll take 20 people and break them into groups of 5. You get left behind.
That's really cool.
So you stay in behind, and then you just join whatever room you want to. You can come in and out. You can send messages out to all groups and say, hey, there's 3 minutes left, and they all get this bar thing across the top. And then you can suck people back into the big group again. And it's really intuitive, really seamless, and a lot of fun.
No, it's great. I haven't tried that, but I talked to some others that said that was definitely worth looking into.
For sure. So now we're going to flip to a poll for a second. So we spent some time talking. You talked about it. I talked about it. It's really important to have a simulator, a testing environment that actually works. If you don't have this, your training is just going to be boring. Like if they can't touch the system, which is a lot of the training, if they can't see it and click the buttons and fill the fields out, then how is it not going to be a big lecture style, thing? Because they can't go out and do that work until they know how to do it. It's a catch-22. And so the only way to really crack that nut is to have a really great simulator, a really great testing environment. So we thought it'd be interesting. Amanda, I'm just going to launch the poll here, I guess, because I'm the host. So I rely on Amanda for a lot of things, but I got to stand on my own. So I'm going to launch this poll, which is basically, what do you have? So the poll's out there now, I think. Can you see it too, Bill?
I do see it. I'm going to answer as well.
Okay. So we'll let people just punch into that. And what we want to basically figure out here is, what do you have? What's your setup? Maybe you don't have anything today and it's something you aspirationally would like to do. Maybe you don't need it. You're in a different type of industry where systems aren't as big a deal. Or maybe you've got one. And so we're looking for, do you have a simulator? Do you have a training environment that's a copy of the live environment? So just have a look through, and sometimes you just have screenshots, and it just is what it is.
Right.
And so,
and I see you can choose more than one there, right?
Yeah. You can. And so winning right now, give it about 30 more seconds. Winning right now is 74% have replicated a live environment for training. So what I might. That's great. That's fantastic. And I would kind of expect that, I guess, for the Oracle CCNB crowd or maybe SAP, that there is a stage gating of going to production, and you can use those environments. Now, I will say this, in my experience, the testing environments are not very good. They're dilapidated, they're broken down, they're out of date, they don't work, the buttons aren't the same. And so I do want to ask everybody in the chat to maybe just say, if 74% of you do have a live replicated training environment, is it working? And maybe you can just say yes or no right now.
It's a different question.
Yeah, so I'm going to end the poll now. Everybody should be able to see now. We've got share the results. Can everybody see that?
Yeah,
yes, no?
That's higher than I've seen in past polls like this. So that's really good to see that people are moving in that direction, because I think that's the right thing to do.
Oh, maybe somebody was saying that maybe I spoiled it. It was 74% before I said anything. Um, but so yeah, the so here we got some responses. So we've got, I've got, I guess, very unreliable. It works 75% of the time, 70% due to what I said. Um, so there, that can be really frustrating. I know that that can be
Mhm.
frustrating. And so I just want to throw out a tip right now before, Bill, you take us into this last section before we break into full Q&A and just some last housekeeping items. But and do stick around for the draw results as well. I know Man is working on that. So um, the the simulator idea for me was really powerful. I worked at Oracle back in the day, and I had an opportunity to look at and evaluate different systems where you could set up these simulators. And a simulator is more powerful than a training environment because you
Mhm.
can record what's happening in the live environment, and you can then capture it as something that people can click and fill out fields, and it doesn't hurt anything or destroy anything. And so it's a little bit
Right.
fake, and the users can feel that, but at the same time, it's real because it's what they're going to be doing. So Adobe Captivate, I know, is a great cheap tool option for building out simulator things. If you're already in the utility space and you use an Oracle system like CCNB, UPK was bought by Oracle a long time ago, way back in the day, and is a very robust system for capturing these little like click-through guides, and you can build a library. And so that's not, you can't just launch people into that and expect them to know what to do. You got to provide scenario guidance, but having that library and being able to link into specific tasks while you're doing your training bits is going to be excellent. And so if your training system isn't working for you, and you're clicking buttons and it's not, and people just don't want to use it, they're frustrated, a simulator might be
Mhm.
a really great idea. And so you can go shopping on Google, or hopefully, like, or in the Oracle instance, it comes with something out of the box that you might be able to use. So thank you very much, everyone, for participating in that poll. Bill, we're going to hand it back to you now. And so you had, part of an exciting part of us meeting you and talking with you is you immediately saying, oh man, a year ago, if I knew about procedure flow and you guys laying out scenarios and how you visually handle procedures, that part 3 for me, where not memorizing and pointing into the thing that you should be looking at as you go into the live work,
Mhm.
became exciting for you. So why don't you share with us a little bit about what's happened with you in the last couple of months after we met?
All right, will do. And I'm actually going to flip over. I know I started to do this a little jumping the gun earlier, but I was going to share my screen here. And so let me know
Perfect. I
if you
can
can
see
see
that.
that.
Yep, I can see that.
All right. All right. Procedure flow and clear path. And like we said before, I'm not going to try and stay in PowerPoint slides for too long, but just a couple of visuals I think really help in this case.
Mm-hmm.
So what was really interesting is we finished this work with Philadelphia Electric last year. We tightened up all of their training materials. We created job aids that that are all paper-based, and they have them at their desks, and they're in a binder that's kind of a cheat sheet binder, but it's still all hard copy and paper copy. And we did create flow diagrams that are kind of the high-level context for each of the big training modules.
Yep.
But when I saw procedure flow, a month or so ago now, and I saw what was possible, I kind of took it back to Pico, and we actually met with them last week, and they're very interested in what the difference could be, right? So I'm going to show you just what that looks like here. This is just a quick slide that shows one of the pages from one of the training modules, right? So it's for the billing and payments options, and it's the very top level that says, look, there's a greeting, and then you authenticate the caller, and then you listen to the customer's concerns. So this is
it's a
kind
little
of the
bit
top level.
sequential. It's generally like a sequential view of how the call is going to go down, essentially.
Exactly. And so this was the material that we had to start with. We did turn this into a paper flow a little bit. But what was really interesting is that with procedure flow, what you do is you take that same sort of information and you create a flow just like you would in Visio or PowerPoint or anything else like that. But it's a flow that becomes a software application that stays on the call center agent's desktop side by side with whatever tools they're using to facilitate their job.
Yeah.
And then what happens is that that flow diagram is there and available for the agent to follow throughout the course of their day. And no matter what the flow is, they can always follow right along with what they're supposed to be doing. And if they get stuck, then they can click on the hyperlink and they can drill down into a lower level of detail.
Right.
And then that lower level of detail can have screenshots of what they're supposed to do in CCMB, or for Pico's case, it was a system called SIMS. And SIMS was built by Anderson Consulting back in the late 80s. And so it's really important for them to be able to see the screenshots and see the menu navigation, because sometimes to get to the right screen, it would take sometimes 5 or 6 clicks through the menu.
Yeah.
And so I'm going to skip ahead a couple of slides just to show that. One thing that was really interesting for Pico especially was that you could put the screenshots right in next to the flows. It's on the agent's desktop, and they can get right to the information that they need immediately. So kind of what we were talking about. Then you can train to the resource, and then you've got this on the agent's desktop, and they can click through and get to the information that they need at the point of need, like in the moment.
Yeah, and when we talked before, I mentioned too, just one of the interesting things about procedure flow is normally with documents, we constrict ourselves to kind of like an 11 by 8 inch paper constriction, what can fit off of a printer. And in procedure flow, you have infinite horizontal and vertical canvas. And so regardless of the size of your screenshot or what's going on or how many you need, you can essentially put them all in there along the side, and there's no room limit. You can just be free to put that in there. So kind of a nice little, you get elbow space basically.
So in hindsight, to me, the software feels really obvious and really basic in some ways. And it's just a shift in thinking for me that you would actually have this at the agent's fingertips on the desktop itself. And then the other thing that I showed Pico was, I've only had like 1 day of training on procedure flow, and I was already able to kind of map out the flows pretty easily and build out exactly what I wanted. And so this is just a picture of the designer. It's just like PowerPoint or anything else. You drag over the shapes, you add the arrows, and then when you're done, you can make changes pretty easily.
Yeah. And this is your editing canvas. You're making a quick change there. And you picked this up so quickly. I'm trying not to say anything because obviously I could talk for hours about procedure flow, but it's fun to watch you kind of talk about your experience. So then you're going to take us in and show us a little bit of how that works.
Yeah. So, we didn't want to make this all about procedure flow, but I did think for this audience, it was interesting to just at least see a quick visual of it. So this is, procedure flow, the live environment. And the thing that I found really interesting is that you can give the ability to not just your trainers, but supervisors, managers, or even the agents themselves can have the ability to look at the live flow and click through and just kind of, if you needed to go to authentication, then you can drill down and get to a lower level of detail. When you come back, it shows you where you just were. But if the agent wants to make a suggestion and say, hey, wait a minute, this doesn't look right. I think that we're missing a step. They can click on their draft, and I'm going to move my Zoom window out of the way and hit edit. And the agent can say, hey, we're really missing a step here. We need to add the green box, right? And you add the green box and you add this to the flow, and then you hit save and close. And then anyone on your team can make that suggested change. And then they go to review changes and they say, I wanted to add the green box, and they submit it for approval. And then this goes to whoever it is that's got control over your environment, your trainer or your manager, whoever's actually approving the changes, because you don't want everyone to have editability, but anyone
sure.
can suggest a change.
Yeah.
And then they can immediately see, what the old environment looked like, and then what the new recommendation looks like with adding the green box, and all based on roles and permissions. They can hit approve, and if they approve that change, now when you go back to the flow, you go back to your live environment, you click on your flow. Now the green box is in place.
Yeah. And
so
that change
when I
notification
looked
for
at
the change history is also highlighting for people what's new and changing there as well.
Exactly. So this to me was pretty powerful, because I remember the amount of time and effort that we would spend reprinting job aids and distributing them, and making sure that all the old incorrect pages were not at people's desks anymore, and trying to make sure that we're all working off the right version with the right rules. The ability to make a change to the rules and have it go out to everybody almost instantly was really, really powerful.
That's awesome. Yeah, thanks for going through that. It is our heartbeat, really, at right down to an agent level, is to, if you see the mistake, fix it. And then that side-by-side comparison is marking up the differences with red and green highlights, comes from the programmer world of modifying code and pushing it out, making sure that your code is always really good and you can see what's happening. So we borrowed on some of those models and brought that into the product, and it's been really, really great for our customers. So yeah, that's cool. And then just your last couple slides here, you want to take us through sort of the bonus stuff?
Yeah. So just the last two comments, and then obviously, if anybody on the phone is interested in seeing or hearing more about this, feel free to reach out to us. But this one, I don't know if this analogy resonates with everybody, but this to me was kind of like Apollo 13, right? Where he says, "I don't care what it was built for. I want to know what it can do." So there's a concept that Procedure Flow has come up with that's kind of called the homepage. And what they realized is that not only is Procedure Flow really good for building flow diagrams, but what they've effectively built is a very easy to edit user interface that's all browser based and is all out in front of your agents. So instead of creating flows, you could just as easily drop images on here and think about it as almost like an internal web page, where you can add graphics, you can add a message that says, "Hey, there's pizza in the break room," or "Don't park in the back parking lot because we're doing some construction." Come meet our new team members, and add some pictures of the team members. Click on a glossary of terms or links out to documents that you've got in SharePoint. So, really interesting, the flexibility when you've got the ability in a matter of, you saw I did it there in a matter of seconds, if not minutes, to make a change and push it out to your team. Just kind of the creative things that you can start to do with it, right?
Yeah, I was saying to you, we had a customer that I saw, and it was really fun. They just had like a zombie month or whatever, and so they had these fun pictures in there. So it kind of cuts you off guard because you're expecting, maybe utility stuff or whatever, and they're having fun. Like the team owns it, and they're putting all these funny GIFs and images and campaigns and things. So so the old school 1990, whatever sort of homepage, plaid background, whatever you want to do, you can have fun with it. Cool. So
so pretty cool for morale and that sort of thing. And then the last thought was, my one partner and I, we trained for literally a day on this, and then we were able to put together a number of flows that meet the needs for Pico. But then after that, I came back and talked to Amy, and was kind of pleasantly surprised to see that you guys have kind of a starter set of billing and payment and start, stop, move, report and outage, a lot of things that are kind of standard flows for utilities. So you're not really starting from scratch. Right?
Exactly. Yeah, we've put some energy into building some samples for different industries, and utility is a huge focus for us, and we have lots of customers in that space. So we thought, hey, let's take what we're learning, build out, the core set that we see commonly, and you can just, as soon as you sign up, you can click on samples, click on utilities, and bang, you've got something to work off of.
Yeah.
Um,
So
so,
to me the main point that I want to make sure that I leave everyone with on that,
mhm, yep,
and kind of like the whole message behind the case study was, we did a pretty good job of putting together training and trying to train to the resources, right? Number 3 on my target list there.
yep,
But what this offers is really the ability to do exactly that, right? If we could have had training where we're doing scenario-based training, right? And then number 3 down at the bottom, no cramming. If we could have based the training on these flows, right? And then have the same exact flows in front of the agents day to day when they're doing their work, they could train on those flows and then be on the phones much, much sooner
yeah,
and be moving from a classroom environment to a real environment that looks very, very similar, right?
exactly. Yep.
Because,
Yeah.
yeah, God.
I was going to say, like, my passion for this webinar is really like, um, get a simulator. Like, if you don't have a simulator, it's not working to the degree that you would like it to be, so people can touch it, your students can touch it, because it's going to make the class so much more interesting. Get that going and squared away. That has nothing to do with procedure flow. And then you can work on scenario based training. So that's the biggest thing here is, we know that it cuts training by 50%. So how can your training be more effective? It can be shorter. Get people doing the work, because talking to customers is ultimately the most interesting thing that they can be doing, right? And how are you going to get them there? You're going to get them there through scenarios and role playing. So what's more relevant than a scenario of a call that you're going to get, right? What's more engaging than role playing that scenario that you're going to get? And then what's more useful than not having to memorize, but be able to go through that? And if you do this, you will cut your training time. It will be more interesting, and you'll just have this really dramatic impact. So
Mm-hmm.
there are things that you can do, obviously, like hold a piece of paper or have 2 people talking, or we'll go through a little list here of fun
Yeah.
takeaways that'll make it more interesting, right? But are you dramatically changing and improving it? And that's really what we wanted to be able to hopefully leave as a summary for you guys today. So on that point, Bill, why don't we go through really quickly, what are some of those bonus things, along with things that people have put into the chat here as well, is
All right.
outside of scenario-based training, which we talked about, and simulators, which is kind of our core theme here, being relevant, engaging, and pointing to the material versus lecture styling it. What are some other things that can be really fun that you can do?
Yeah, so I've got my cheat sheet here in case I forget some of them. So
Yep.
we already talked about some of the pieces, like 2 presenters, like using the paper and just turning around the paper so you've got something to look at. We talked about polls and questions, like we did a little bit earlier.
We did all of that.
The other one that we didn't really use as much today, but can also be really useful, is games and quizzes. And so the couple of tools that we wanted to throw out to folks, in case you hadn't heard of these, is look into something called Mentimeter or Kahoot. These are really, really easy and intuitive to use.
Just while you're saying that,
Yeah, go ahead.
So Amanda, 2 things here quick. I'm going to interrupt you. We had the draw, and just so in case people have to run off here, Crystal Wholeness won. So congratulations.
Congratulations, Crystal.
Yeah.
Hey.
So we'll be sending you a gift card, and Amanda will coordinate with you on getting your information. We'll be wrapping this up and giving this out as a blog post. The video will be available. You can share with other people. And the other thing was, Amanda just posted everything you're talking about. She's posting that in the chat. So the links are there for all the softwares that you're mentioning, that games, surveys, polling, all that stuff, which will be really useful and helpful.
Excellent.
So sorry to interrupt. I'm going to give it back to you. I just want to let people know, as if they have to peel, that those links are in there so they can grab and go.
Perfect. All right. So I want to be respectful of time, because I see we've only got about 4 minutes till we're at the top of our hour here. I know, Micah, you wanted to talk a little bit about how sometimes there's a school of thought around how games are not as useful or not appropriate in some scenarios. And
yeah, I mean,
give you a chance to talk about that.
There is. So I was going to pose it as a question to you and see,
Okay.
do games work against what we just said? Because we said you don't want to be memorizing. So if we're quizzing people, we're saying, hey, memorize all this material, and now I'm going to quiz you on it. Is that the right thing to be doing? Does that conflict with scenario-based training and what we were talking about? And do you want to comment on that?
Yeah, I see you threw it back at me. Okay. I don't think they're mutually exclusive, right?
Right.
So what we did with Pico that I found really, really useful is we ran games and quizzes where the students had to be on the simulator. And so it would be partly a role play to the entire class. And you'd say, okay, I'm a customer calling in and I've got a 10-day notice and here's my account number. And then they would have to log into the system, right? They all had the exact same simulator on the desktops in front of them, log into the simulator, look up the account number, navigate to the correct screen, look up the right information, maybe do a calculation or consider an eligibility rule, and then answer the question, right? Yeah. And so you can definitely do scenarios and games together, and that worked really well for us.
Yeah, and I think for me, just closing up here, the two things that I really like about games is that we're human beings, we're humans, and games are just fun, and it's fun to be a human. So you can't just have dry toast everything. We're talking about procedures here. So I love Trivia Maker. I know there's other quiz type, who wants to be a millionaire type things where you're choosing from 4 options, but like Trivia Maker has Jeopardy, they got Wheel of Fortune, they've got the one with Family Feud style, so you can cut up into 2 teams and have a really full-on competition. And then to your point, it's an open book test, right? So you can use, if you've got procedure flow up on one screen at home and you're making them do a quiz or a test, hey, go through procedure flow and find the answer. You're still training them to where do they go get the answer. And so you can actually bridge those 2 things together, have a party, have a ton of fun, have an open book test, which is more true to life, right? I don't do math anymore. I just use my iPhone calculator and just have some fun. So yeah, with 3 minutes left, I want to thank everybody for coming out. We really appreciate everybody. I hope you had a great time. If you did, let us know. We'd love to know, just one way or the other, what you thought of it. If you want to leave us with some thoughts on something you'd like us to do next time, I think there was some great questions there. We're gonna follow up on if it could lead to a whole other session. But if there's something more specific beyond today that you wanted to chat through, we would love to do a part 2. And we did the draw results, so my checklist is all done. Bill, do you have any closing thoughts for us beyond your
No. Yeah, I guess I had a couple last quick thoughts. One is, I know that with Mentimeter and Kahoot and some of those, we were not able to see individual agent performance on the quizzes and tests.
Sure. Yep.
So we ended up using SurveyMonkey. With SurveyMonkey, really easy to build a quiz. You just make your first question the agent's name, so that you can keep track of who's who.
Yep.
And how they're filling things out. So that was one. Number 2, as you guys are wrapping up, if you could, like Micah said, please give us any other suggestions on topics for next time. What you would like to hear more about, that would be great. And I think that's all I've got.
Okay. So just in signing out, I just want to say, if you're interested in procedure flow or you're interested in Bill's training services, and he's got some other really cool software as well, which is like data and insights. And he's got this new ClearPath company, which has got some software that helps with some of your customers that might need to set up payment programs and stuff. And there's a lot of opportunity there to help. It's a win-win-win, help your customers, help yourself, get government grants and things like that, and help the company. So help everybody, win-win-win. And so his website, I have it on my other sheet here. You can find, he just got started with this in January. It's brand new, but you go to www.clearpath.community. So it's com, but you got to add the community piece on it. So www.clearpath.community, and you can learn more about Bill. And Bill's one of our partners now, and so you can go to him and talk to him about procedure flow, and he'd love to come help you with your, any questions you have there you can set up. So thank you, Bill. Been a pleasure having you today, and hopefully we can do this again sometime soon.
All right. Thanks for the invitation. Thanks, Micah. Thanks, everybody.
Have a great day, everybody. Take care.